So Power Resins was nice enough to send me out these 2 bottles of resin to try out, and I'm going to show in this video how they are to print and cast. So let's get started. So the 2 resins that they sent out to me are the Burn and the Dark. The Burn is the green one you see here, and it is for your everyday castings that don't need extreme details or extremely sharp edges or any type of stone settings, but you can do up to a certain point of those. Their Dark, on the other hand, is made to be for very sharp prints, so if you have very fine details, it should show up using their Dark. So as you can see, I printed the same models using both of these, and to do this I used the Dark on my Elegoo Mars 2 Pro and the Burn on my Anycubic Mono. And both of these were printed at the manufacturer's recommended settings for each machine, and everything printed fine. The one thing I do highly suggest doing before printing anything in your Castable Resins is printing a sample and messing with the orientations of your parts to make sure that everything will print in whatever orientation you want. And if you find any problems, you can fix them before using the actual Castable Resin, which is really expensive in comparison. So always keep a thing of just standard 3D printer resin so you can make test prints. So with most 3D prints, we need to remove the supports that allowed this to actually print. So to do this, they usually break off pretty easily, but you're going to need some clippers to help you along the way. For me, I like to separate each model, just so I have less in my hand. Alright, so I'm going to start with the skull one first, and just go around and clip off any of the little points where it's connecting to our supports. So that was pretty simple, and I know this is really hard to be picked up on the camera because it's black and everything behind it is so light colored, but hopefully you can see enough of it. If you look on the inside though, where everything was touching all the supports, you'll see little tiny dots, and those are actually little holes that we're going to have to fill in or buff out afterwards when it's actually turned into metal. So you might also notice this weird, interesting looking wavy patterns all over it. And this is from the printer itself. I printed at 0.05 millimeters, and I didn't have anti-aliasing on. So all of these little lines are basically little weird layer lines. So you can buff them out, or you can leave them in, and you'll just add that little bit of extra texture to your piece after it's cast. So let me get all the supports off of all of these pieces, and we can actually start comparing them. So now with all the supports removed, we can actually check out what is different between the different resins and the different orientations of being printed. So to start off, let's look at the green skull. It has a little bit of a defect going through the center of it. It doesn't seem to really do anything, but there is a line there. Also, it is not as crisp as it could be, but it still looks fine. It is missing some details like the canine teeth. Only one of them kind of came out, the other one is non-existent, but overall it looks fine. As for the dark resin, it came out a lot better. There are still some lines going across it, but everything is just much more pronounced and sharper looking. So it really does print with more sharp details. So here's a side-by-side of the other pieces, and you can see that some things are a little more rounded on the burn, and everything is really sharp on the dark one. So it does a really good job at doing geometric shapes. So this is kind of a good example to show you what orientation will do. I printed one of these upside down, and all the supports had to hold it up, so it left a bunch of holes in it. The other one doesn't have any holes on this side, so it's completely mirror smooth. But the underside and the under part of the band will have some holes. And finally, this kind of shows the limitation of the burn. I printed this one upside down as well, but the bezel was too thin and wasn't able to make it sharp enough, so it kind of deformed a little bit. So with all that said, I'm going to be using just 2 of each one of these, the best ones that I was able to get, and then the 2 skull ones, but I need to clean these up. So first I'm going to start by doing some sanding work or filing using just a bunch of files. And make sure you have some safety glasses and a mask or a respirator, because it's not okay to breathe in the dust from this. So now with everything all cleaned up and attached to my sprue tree, I need to weigh this to figure out how much silver I actually need. So I found this website that basically does all the math for you. You just have to fill in what you're working with. So just add in your weight, which is 16.1 grams for me. I'm going to be making the models from wax, and then I want to turn them into sterling silver. And then you can skip the other two things and push calculate values. So according to that, I need 166.8 grams of silver. So to get the proper weight that I need, I'm going to be using some failed castings, a old sprue tree, and some silver that I'm not going to be using right now. And I'm just going to throw all this into my furnace and use it later. So all that's left to really do is get this all set up in its flask, put its plaster in, and get it burning out so we can actually cast our pieces and see how everything goes. If you're looking for more detail on how all this casting stuff works, I made a pretty much fully detailed video about it already, and I'll make sure to link in the description and in the card at the top of this video. So here's my burnout cycle. It's very simple. It's basically just ramp it up over 1 hour to 800 degrees Celsius, let it sit there for about 2 hours, and then flip your flask over, and then let it go for another 2 hours until it ramps down on its own to around 500 degrees Celsius for about an hour. So as we wait for that to finish, check out how I made the hidden compartment ring using Fusion 360. So this is a free 3D program that you can download and start working with today. And there's tons of info and tutorials and training classes on this, and that's a perfect spot for the sponsor of this video, which is Skillshare. So I thought Skillshare would be a fitting sponsor for my channel, seeing that you come here to learn stuff, and Skillshare is a community for learning. And just like with my videos, you can learn at your own pace. And one of the things I really like about it is every class is project oriented. So you're working towards a goal and not just learning random skills. So you'll actually have something by the end of it. So if you are wanting to start out learning some stuff about Fusion 360, I suggest Kevin Kennedy. He has a 3-part class that takes you from installing the program to getting just about all of the basics down. Also, be sure to check out Vladimir Mariano. He has a bunch of classes on 3D printing and how to think in the terms of actually printing out objects, along with teaching you how to use Fusion 360 as well. So the first 1,000 people to click the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. This gives you full access to the entire catalog that Skillshare has to offer. And after that, Skillshare is as low as $10 a month with an annual subscription. So thank you Skillshare for sponsoring this video and supporting my channel. Alright, so finally for the moment of truth, we're going to see if the castings actually cast. So for the most part, everything looks pretty good. I just need to clean them up, cut them out, and see how everything looks. Alright, so here's everything all cut out. They're not cleaned up, obviously, but I wanted to show any of the defects that I found already on them to show the differences. So everything on this side is from the dark, and everything on this side is from the burn. So let's look at the skull. So as you can see, it looks really nice, actually. There are a little bit of problems in the horn here, and then there's this hole right here that I actually punched out using a solder pick, and it goes all the way through. And then there's also right here that I found with the solder pick also. These are little tiny dots usually, and then you just poke them out and you can find if they go all the way through or what's going on. So it had some sort of inclusions or bubble inside of the metal that left a hole, which is really annoying but can be fixed. So this is the one from the burn, and you can see the little lines that I was talking about before transferred over, which should be fine if we go through and clean it up, but it's something to look into. And this is the problem side on this one. In the horn, there's lots of little divots, and down in here, so down in here it has some holes. They're not as deep as the other ones, but they're still holes. But I wasn't able to find any of the ones that I can poke through on this one at all. So this piece came out really nice. It did have one hole that went all the way through. And this is done in the dark resin as well. So it seems like the dark resin gets more of these little holes, and I need to figure out how to make that not happen. So this is the one from the burn. It's not as nicely cast. There are some tiny holes down here, kind of like how it has on the horn of the skull from this. And then right in here, the finish is kind of weird, like something was left behind a bit. But it's totally usable and all. I just wanted to show you what little differences there are. And the last piece of each one is the inside piece of that ring. In this channel, it's really nicely done. This is the dark one, by the way, and will need very little cleanup. There's no holes or anything in this one besides right inside the band. There's a tiny spot. Other than that, there's nothing wrong with it, and I wasn't able to poke that one out. So the burn, on the other hand, has a little bit of an imperfection there. A bubble was right there, so it makes a little like blob, basically. And then the finish on the channel on the inside is not great. It's kind of like how the inside of the other band was, but it will be usable as well. So all in all, they did really good. The little holes are a thing that I'm going to have to figure out how to make not happen. But other than that, these are all 100% usable with a little bit of fixing. Now I just need to clean them all up. So I didn't do a full cleanup and polish on these because I did find a lot more little holes that I need to go through and fix. Honestly, they're not that bad, and I could just fill them in with a little bit of solder and it should look perfectly fine. But I want to make sure to show you every little detail of what went wrong or what didn't work perfectly. I also added a patina to a lot of the pieces just to test out what different colorations I wanted to go with. So with the dark skull ring, I just found a little bit of extra pitting in it, and the other two holes are still there. As for the burn skull ring, it has some holes in the back part of the band that revealed themselves after cleaning it up, but nowhere else that I could find. And last is the secret compartment ring made with the burn resin, and its finish is pretty rough just because I left in a bunch of layer lines and stuff like that, and it doesn't quite fit together. I'm going to need to do a lot of work to actually make the two pieces slide together. So just to sum everything up, this resin is really easy to print with, both of them, and they make really good prints, as you have seen. When it comes to the actual burnout and everything, it seems to work fine, but I did get those little holes, so I don't know if that's something I'm doing or if it's part of the resin. If you know, leave a comment and let me know, because I would love to not have to deal with those anymore. Other than that, thank you Power Resins for sending out your resins for me to try out, and I'll be using them in the future. So if this video was helpful to you, leave a like, and leave a comment if you have any suggestions for me in my casting process. And subscribe to my channel. I try to make helpful stuff like this every week. See you guys next time. Bye!